According to Isabel Wagner, a statistician for Statista, she found that in 2018 there were over 2 million more licensed female drivers than there were male drivers in America. Now I share this stat with you because we live in a society where equality is so expected and so normal, but it hasn't always been that way for men and women. I'm going to show you today how the car was a catalyst for social change and a catalyst for equality, and one of the key components to how we got to where we are today. I'm knowledgeable about this topic because I studied it for an entire semester. I wrote a 23-page research paper on this with over 23 academic sources. The main two areas and aspects I'm going to focus on today are how the car granted women control of their daily life and how the car granted women control of their sexual life. Now I have a small graph here to show you the number of women and men on the road. The bottom line, which is the purple line, is the females on the road, and the blue line, the top line, is the male on the road. Now as we can see, as we get older, there are more older women driving than there are older men. Almost every demographic besides younger people has more women driving than there are men driving, just proving how monumental the invention of the automobile was for the equality and opportunity of women. Now, if we want to look at their daily life, we have to go back to 1888 to find Bertha Benz, who was the first woman to ever take a road trip. Her husband, Carl Benz, of Mercedes-Benz, was an inventor in the 1800s, and in 1888, Bertha Benz and her two sons drove 66 miles without her husband, without any formal training and mechanical knowledge. But that didn't stop her. She was able to fix her ignition when it short-circuited, clean her fuel pipe, and also repair her brake pads on the fly. Bertha Benz showed that women were capable and competent of doing everything men could when it came to automobiles. She was the pioneer for possibilities that the car provided to women. In the 1920s, in fact in 1928, America was #1 in automobile production thanks to Henry Ford. In 1928, America controlled 85% of worldwide automobile production, which granted unprecedented access to women. But in the GI Bill in 1945, Margaret Walsh, a historian studying feminist history, says that suburbanization was what caused equality in America. This is because women had to move out of the city to follow her husband. Move out of the city, they had to drive into the city to do everything. Dr. McFarland, a history professor at UCW, says that women were not only running errands, but they were entering the workforce at higher numbers than ever. In fact, in 1970, 28% of all American households had 2 or more cars, one for the husband, one for the wife. Women could now get out in the world without her husband, by herself. She was her own independent person, whether it be running errands and shopping or working. She was independent, and that's all thanks to the automobile. If we transition and look at their sexual life, this is another story. In the 1940s, there was a poll done, and it found that sex was the #1 reported problem facing teenagers of that generation. That's because they clashed with old ideals who thought you should marry somebody you know, or it should be arranged. No more with the car. The car is what granted women access to dating and marrying for love. Men and women both reported higher numbers of partners before marriage thanks to the car. The invention of the drive-in, lover's lane, and restaurants and drive-thrus is what allowed dating to be mobile. No longer was it sitting in the house. The car allowed for women and men to get out of the house, out of the gaze of their parents, and be their own independent sexual beings. The 1950s and the 1960s was the major turning point in sexual revolution for teenagers in America. And we continue to see that today, as no more do we really date at home. We date at a restaurant or a movie or an art museum. We date mobily. That's all thanks to the car. It revolutionized the way women could be their own independent sexual people, changing the equality that men and women had. It was normal for men, now it was normal for women. In conclusion, we can see that the car was a major catalyst for social change in America, And it impacted women's lives in much more than these two ways, but these are the two most important. To recap, we see that it controlled their daily life thanks to suburbanization and thanks to America being number one in car production. It also allowed them to get into the workforce and get into workforce at higher numbers than ever. That's all thanks to the car. Thanks to the car, we also see that women and men were equally sexually. They were free. They were liberated. They could get out of their parents' house and into the public on their own. They were now their own sexual being, and it was liberating. As we can see, the car was a major catalyst for social change in America, and it impacted women's lives in an unprecedented, monumental fashion. Thank you.